just 6 days after Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, a collective day of Jewish disasters, persecutions, and many sad moments in our history, we celebrate the festival of love. And I think there is a commentary even there, even in the fact that they are so close together. So most Jews today hardly ever heard of this day. Tu B'Av was almost unnoticed in the Jewish calendar for many centuries. It's been revived in recent years, especially in the state of Israel. In its modern version, Tu B'Av has become a Jewish version of Valentine's Day in English-speaking countries, but this phase in Israel and connecting with Jewish culture. There is no mention of this day in the Hebrew Bible. There is an allusion to it that early rabbis, about the 3rd or 4th century of the Common Era, they retrospectively applied this story into this day. There is a story when the tribe of Benjamin, there is a very sad story in the Hebrew Bible about the tribe of Benjamin, and a few people, let's say, behaved very badly towards a Jewish woman, and as a result of it, all other tribes said, "We will never marry you again." So they imposed a ban on marriage within the tribe of Benjamin. And therefore, this day became the only day when there was an exception, when the people from the tribe of Benjamin could marry the people from other tribes. So that was the exception. But again, there is no mention of this particular day in the Hebrew Bible. The first mention of it is in the Mishnah, where Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is quoted saying this: "There were no better days for the people of Israel than the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur, since on these days the daughters of Jerusalem," or often the daughters of Jerusalem is used as a euphemism for all Jewish women. "Daughters of Jerusalem go out dressed in white and dance in the vineyards." What were they saying? They were saying, "Young man, consider whom you choose." So it might be an ancient equivalent of social media and some apps, dating apps, but that's the notion of love and relationship, especially when it comes to the mentioning of the ancient world, can raise many issues for us today. I'm sure that many of you thought when I read this Mishnah that the idea of that a man should choose a woman and the woman should dance in front of a man is problematic and sexist. And it is so, yes. It was relevant and probably considered normal then, and it is part of our tradition, so we can't get rid of it. But, as it is the case with many other parts of the ancient world, it should be developed, changed, and adjusted for the modern world. Such a change in religion happens all the time, especially in liberal Jewish tradition. Our task is to look at the core of the text and try to understand what lies behind the text, what are the main principles, and try to apply it to the modern world. One of the examples of such change is the prayer Shema. And as I said in the beginning, the first paragraph of Shema appears in full in the Torah, or rather the other way around. Those people who compiled our prayer book just took paragraph from the Torah and declare it a prayer. So the first line and the first paragraph of Shema are very well known. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Eternal One is our God, the Eternal God is one. Followed by the paragraph Ve'ahavta, and you shall love the Eternal One with all your heart, with all your might, and so on. In our synagogue, after the Ahavta passage, Shema concludes with Leman Tizkiru, usually sang by the choir or soloist. The first line is the declaration of faith, the Shema Israel. The starting point and the only unquestionable statement in Judaism. This is the declaration of monotheism. There is only one God, one source of everything. By the way, this is very challenging. How can you imagine only one source of everything that we consider good and evil? There's only one source of everything, and that's the difficulty of Shema. How can you really live in a world where everything that's bad or evil is created by the same God, that everything that's not? The following the Ahavta paragraph is the continuation of the quote from Torah, Deuteronomy chapter 6. It speaks about love, and that we are commanded to love God in Judaism. And also, the paragraph is about teaching our children and some other important aspects of Jewish identity. However, not all liberal Jews know that many other synagogues have a paragraph after the Ahavta and before Leman Tizkiru. There is an additional paragraph in Shema. In Siddur Lev Chadash, and I would like you to open it now, it can be found on the page 539. 539. And it is the direct quote from another passage in Torah, Deuteronomy chapter 11, which is the next week's Torah portion. If you will indeed obey the commandments which I enjoin on you this day, loving and serving the Eternal One your God with all your heart and soul, then I will provide the rain your land needs, the early and the late rain in due season. You will gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. I will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Take care not to be lured away to serve other gods and worship them, for then the Eternal One will rouse to anger against you and shut up the heavens, so that there is no rain, and the ground doesn't yield its produce. And then you will quickly perish from the good land which the Eternal One is giving you. Therefore, impress these words on your heart and soul. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, and let them be like fortress between your eyes. Teach them to your children, speaking of them in your home and in your way, when you lie down, when you rise up, and inscribe them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates, that you and your children may continue to live in the land which the Eternal One solemnly promised to your ancestors, as long as the heavens are above the earth. So the relationship that this passage portrays between God and people are very conditional. If you do what you're told, you will have a good life, with rains, with food. Oh, today, a life with rain would be very lovely, isn't it? With rains, with food, with a place to live, with everything. If you don't, you will lose everything. And perhaps today we can find a meaning in this passage. So it is this conditional nature of the passage that was problematic. We know that if you keep all your commandments and be so-called good Jew, right, doing everything by the book and ticking all the boxes, it doesn't mean that you will have prosperous and healthy life. We know that. And that's why early progressive rabbis got rid of the second paragraph. Either replaced it or simply ignored it, as we do in the prayer book normally. So today, perhaps, we can find the meaning in this passage and see it as an allusion to climate change. If we behave morally, we will have rains. and gather in our grain and fruits in its season. If we don't, the land will become uninhabitable and we will perish from the land. However, there is something more and a deeper meaning in this passage. All 3 paragraphs of Shema are considered as one prayer. Even though it consists of 3 different quotes from Torah, it is still one prayer. According to Rashi, medieval French commentator, the main meaning of Shema, the main message of Shema is love. And he contrasts love with fear. So basically he says, what's the opposite of love? It's not hate, it's fear. So Shema begins with the notion of love, but ends with fear, he says. Here's what he writes. One should fulfill God's commandments out of love. For one who acts out of love is not like the one who acts out of fear. People who serve their master out of fear, if the master troubles them too much, they leave them and go away. The main purpose of religion, therefore, and indeed the whole society, is not to create conditional relationship based on punishment and fear, but the true relationship, and that must be based on unconditional acceptance and trust. And sometimes we call it love, unconditional acceptance and trust. Perhaps fear is a useful tool for us, and there is no doubt about it. It helps us to be concerned about our future. But if we only have fear, we only think about future, and we'll lose today, we'll lose the present. Fear is what can start important changes in the world. But like it's in the Shema, love should come first. Trust, kindness, and positive relationship with the world should always be starting point and driving force. A world without fear is ignorant and arrogant, but the world without love is unkind and hopeless. The world without fear is a world without future, but the world without love is the world with no today and no present. Shabbat Shalom.